What no one tells you about intimacy after 50. Discover the secret to keeping passion alive and protecting your health. Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when we set intimacy aside? Over the years, many couples start to see their desire and passion wane, not realizing that this can affect much more than just the relationship. The truth is that the lack of intimacy goes beyond emotional connection. It can impact your physical health as well. Indeed, problems such as stress, anxiety, and even heart complications can arise from the absence of a close touch, of a real presence. Imagine what would happen if you simply stopped connecting with the person you love. Small distances become big walls, and routine gradually replaces complicity. But does it have to be this way? Today, we will explore together the truths about intimacy after 50, bringing real stories and powerful tips to keep the flame burning, protect your health, and above all, ensure that your life is full of meaning at any age. Exploring sexuality after 50 is about uncovering layers of intimacy that go beyond the physical. At this stage of life, sexuality takes on new meanings, shedding social expectations and becoming a more personal, deep, and reflective journey. The pursuit of pleasure and connection is no longer driven solely by desire, but also by an understanding of the body, the soul, and the changes both undergo over time. Intimacy now transcends physical touch and expands to emotions, deep conversations, shared laughter, and mutual respect for each other's space and pace. It's a phase where complicity grows, where a look says more than words, and where desire mixes with admiration and gratitude for the partner who joins us on this life journey. Every intimate gesture reaffirms affection and respect. This transformation in mature sexuality is not a loss of vitality, but rather an expansion of the senses and an understanding of what truly matters in a connection. The accumulated life experience allows us to experience sexuality as a meeting of souls, a celebration of shared history, and the present built together. It's about realizing that intimacy is the most authentic expression of self-love and acceptance of who we are, and this acceptance shines in every touch and every moment shared together. The absence of an active sexual life in maturity can have a profound impact, both emotionally and physically, for men and women. Physically, studies indicate that a lack of regular intimacy can be linked to cardiovascular problems, as sexual activity supports heart health by stimulating blood circulation and the release of well-being hormones. Over the years, the absence of this activity can also negatively affect the immune system, making the body more susceptible to illnesses. On an emotional level, a lack of sex can deeply affect self-esteem and self-confidence, especially in a phase where the body and self-image are in constant transformation. Both men and women may feel less desired and question their ability to attract the other, creating a cycle of insecurities that affect mood and even the willingness to engage in daily activities. At this point, intimacy goes beyond carnal desire. It is a reaffirmation of personal value, which helps strengthen self-love and the acceptance of natural age-related changes. Moreover, the absence of intimate connection can also weaken emotional bonds in relationships. Physical intimacy is one of the languages of affection, and when absent, it can generate emotional distance, pushing partners apart and creating invisible barriers in daily life. This distance can result in loneliness and sadness, impacting the quality of life and overall well-being. Understanding and seeking alternatives to maintain intimacy, even if adapted to the needs of maturity, is essential for a full and balanced life. Juan and Maria, married for over 30 years, have always been inseparable partners, with a deep connection that transcends time. However, with the arrival of maturity, they noticed a decrease in the frequency and intensity of their sexual life. This change was not planned. It happened gradually, like a tide receding from the sand without notice. At first, they didn't seem to notice, but over time, they began to feel a subtle emptiness, a distance between them that they couldn't explain. The absence of this intimate bond brought silence to their gestures, and the nights once filled with affection became quieter. For Maria, this phase brought insecurities about her appearance and her value in Juan's eyes. She questioned whether she was still desired, whether he looked at her with the same sparkle as before. Juan, on the other hand, felt a mix of frustration and shame, believing that perhaps he was failing to keep the flame alive. Pride prevented him from sharing these thoughts, and both, in silence, suffered from the growing distance between them. The lack of dialogue increased the weight of these doubts, and what was once a relationship of complicity became an emotional challenge, an unknown territory they feared to explore. One day, in a frank and painful conversation, they decided to open their hearts. They shared their fears and recognized that the desire was still there, although hidden beneath the insecurities and changes brought by time. This moment of vulnerability allowed them to rediscover a new type of intimacy, where touch and company had a deeper meaning. Gradually, they found ways to connect that went beyond the physical, cultivating gestures of affection, long conversations, and moments of affection that renewed their relationship. Juan and Maria discovered that passion and maturity is like a gentle flame, which warms slowly but with an intensity that only experience can bring. For Juan, the decrease in libido and erection problems arose unexpectedly, bringing a sense of vulnerability and even shame. He had always prided himself on his vitality, but over the years, his body began to respond differently, often failing in intimate moments. This situation affected not only his self-confidence, but also the spontaneity in his relationship with Maria. He began to avoid intimacy, fearing to disappoint her, and the weight of these worries drove him even further away, creating a cycle of anxiety that silently undermined their connection. Maria, in turn, faced the effects of menopause, with hormonal changes that affected her body and her desire. The natural decrease in lubrication made her feel physical discomfort, turning intimacy into a moment of apprehension rather than pleasure. Desire seemed distant, and her body, once familiar, now seemed strange to her. Maria struggled to adapt to these new sensations while trying to understand the emotional impact of these changes. Both, involved in their own silent battles, realized that they needed to share these difficulties to find balance and rediscover the connection they so valued. The lack of sex, although often seen just as a physical aspect, has a profound impact on the emotional dynamics of a marriage. When Juan and Maria began to distance themselves intimately, they realized that the touch and connection that previously sustained their relationship were now absent. This absence of closeness created an emotional gap that both felt, but didn't know how to express. Affectionate gestures became rarer, and daily conversations lost their tone of complicity. Routine took the place of passion, and silence crept in where laughter and shared glances once were. Over time, the lack of intimacy generated subtle resentments. Maria felt that one no longer cared for her as before, questioning whether the distance was a choice. In turn, one interpreted Maria's silence as a sign of rejection, believing that she no longer felt desire for him. These thoughts, fueled by insecurities, created an invisible barrier between them, turning minor frustrations into bigger conflicts. Communication, which could have helped alleviate these feelings, was compromised by the fear of exposing vulnerabilities and the reluctance to cause pain to the other. As the emotional disconnection grew, both began to experience a type of loneliness within the marriage, a feeling of being together but apart. Memories of moments of affection seemed increasingly distant, like remnants of a time that no longer existed. This disconnection affected their self-esteem and sense of security in the relationship, leaving both more vulnerable and isolated. However, the awareness of this separation also brought the understanding that they needed to seek ways to reconnect and revitalize the relationship, recognizing that emotional intimacy was just as important as the physical to sustain the bond they had built over the years. Determined to face the distance that had grown between them, Juan and Maria chose a different path, that of vulnerability and honest communication. They sat face to face and, in a frank conversation, shared their fears, insecurities, and desires without reservations. Juan spoke about his frustration with changes in his own body and the fear of disappointing her, while Maria confessed her own doubts, the effects of menopause, and the fear that he no longer saw her as before. This sincere exchange was the first step to break the cycle of silence that had been established between them, strengthening trust and awakening the desire to rediscover pleasure together, without pressures or expectations. With this renewed basis of communication, Juan and Maria opened up to explore new forms of intimacy. Caresses and hugs gained more space in their daily lives, and both began to see these moments as a valuable connection, going beyond the sexual relationship itself. In search of experiencing pleasure in other ways, they decided to incorporate sensual massages, providing a caring and attentive touch, which allowed both to feel valued and desired. These practices brought a sense of novelty to the relationship, transforming the act of touching each other into a slow and careful dance, where each gesture was a reunion with the body and with each other. In addition to massages, Juan and Maria took a bold step and introduced sexual toys into their relationship, breaking taboos and discovering new ways to awaken desire and pleasure. This initiative brought a touch of lightness and curiosity, helping to break barriers and prejudices they had about the subject. Each experience became a way to explore intimacy on new levels, without the pressure to meet standards or expectations. By allowing themselves to experiment, they rediscovered that intimacy can be creative and flexible, and that desire can be reinvented, even after years together. Faced with the challenges they were experiencing and wishing to recover the connection that seemed distant, Juan and Maria decided to seek guidance from a sexual therapist. The decision required courage, as exposing their intimacies to a professional was something new and even uncomfortable for both. However, from the first session, the therapist created a safe space where they could express their frustrations and fears without judgment. During the sessions, they received communication tools that allowed them to share their desires and limits in a more open and caring way, rescuing the complicity and understanding that had been lost. In addition to communication techniques, the therapist suggested practical exercises to explore intimacy gradually and without pressures. Among the techniques were moments of touch and synchronized breathing, where both could feel the presence of the other and rediscover pleasure in small interactions. Over time, these exercises helped Juan and Maria redefine the meaning of intimacy and pleasure, understanding that sexual relations could be an expression of affection and connection without the rigidity of expectations. This therapeutic journey not only revitalized their sex life, but also brought a new perspective on the love and partnership they had built, strengthening the relationship with a more solid and conscious foundation. Over the months, Juan and Maria began to realize that accepting the changes brought by age was the first step to fully live this new phase of life. Instead of fighting against the transformations of the body and desire, they embraced these changes as a natural part of their story together. They set aside the pressure to match an idealized image of youth and understood that now, intimacy did not need to follow the same rhythm as before. This adaptation process brought an unexpected lightness, allowing both to reconnect with renewed spontaneity, free of demands and expectations. This acceptance also showed them that pleasure could be rediscovered in ways they had never imagined before. With less haste and more attention to details, they learned to value the small gestures of affection and closeness. A simple exchange of glances or a touch on the hands became powerful demonstrations of affection, meaningful and laden with intimacy. By allowing themselves to experience these moments, they realized that the connection between them went far beyond the physical. It was a deep emotional bond, nurtured by years of companionship, understanding, and respect. Each moment together became a new opportunity to celebrate love authentically and without pressures. This journey of adaptation and acceptance strengthened not only Juan and Maria's commitment to each other, but also the love they shared. They understood that being together was about supporting each other in all phases of life, facing challenges and embracing changes with patience and complicity. As they rediscovered intimacy and pleasure in a way adapted to the reality they lived, they realized that love and maturity is like aged wine, fuller-bodied, more intense, and filled with layers that only time can reveal. For Juan and Maria, love revealed itself as the anchor that kept them united even in the face of the challenges and transformations brought by age. As the years passed, they realized that their mutual commitment to always be there for each other was the true fuel of their relationship. The love, which before was expressed intensely and passionately, now found a new way to manifest itself, deeper and more serene, marked by the respect and gratitude of having someone by their side who understands and values each phase of life. This emotional security allowed both to feel welcomed, accepted, and free to explore new ways to connect. Respect, an essential element of their commitment, became even more evident over the years. Juan and Maria understood that each had their own rhythm, needs, and limitations, and instead of letting these differences affect them, they decided to build bridges of understanding. They learned to listen to each other patiently, to value the small kindnesses of daily life, and to respect the moments when the other needed space. This mutual respect was reflected in how they approached intimacy, always taking into account the well-being and comfort of both, which resulted in a more enriching and harmonious experience. Through this entire process, the love and commitment of Juan and Maria proved to be indispensable keys to maintaining a satisfying sexual and emotional life. By accepting the natural changes of age and investing in the relationship with dedication and affection, they discovered that desire could be cultivated even after decades together. It's not just about keeping the passion alive, but about reinforcing the emotional connection and the sense of belonging that both had built over their lives. They understood that true love is like a constant flame, which can vary in intensity, but never goes out when nourished with care, respect, and genuine commitment. In conclusion, the video proposes a deep and inspiring reflection on the value of sexuality and intimacy and maturity, reminding us that these elements do not deplete over the years but transform and gain new layers of meaning. The narrator emphasizes that sexuality after 50 years is an expression of life, a way to celebrate the connection with the partner and to strengthen self-love. This is the moment to free ourselves from the constraints and expectations imposed by society and to see intimacy as an authentic form of care and presence. The journey of Juan and Maria becomes an example that, with patience and acceptance, it is possible to rediscover pleasure and connection at every stage of life. The video also encourages the audience not to fear the natural changes of the body and mind that come with age, but to embrace them with respect and curiosity. The message is clear. Maturity brings with it the opportunity to explore new forms of pleasure and to discover nuances of intimacy that may not have been possible in youth. In a call to action, the video encourages each viewer to reflect on their own journey, to redefine the role of sexuality in their life, and to value the power of a touch, a glance, a true presence that transcends time and physical limitations. Finally, the video invites the audience to share their own experiences and stories in the comments, creating a network of support and exchange of wisdom among those who have walked similar paths. By opening this space, the final message reinforces that sexuality and intimacy are vital aspects of life, regardless of age, and that talking about these issues is essential to strengthen bonds, demystify taboos, and promote emotional and physical well-being. This exchange of experiences transforms the video into a starting point for a continuous and inspiring dialogue on how to love and be loved fully at all stages of life. So, now that you've discovered how intimacy and love not only strengthen your relationship, but also impact your health and well-being, here's a final reminder. Take care of it. Passion and connection, at any age, are like a plant. If you don't water it, it doesn't grow. If you don't pay attention, it fades away. And what no one usually tells you is that the absence of this closeness can make your life more vulnerable, both emotionally and physically. So, stay alert. Life is too short not to enjoy every moment of affection, every touch, and every glance that brings you closer to the one you love. Keeping intimacy alive is, above all, a form of self-care, a way to protect your body and your soul. And remember, it's never too late to rediscover pleasure, connection, and the true meaning of being together. If you enjoyed this content and want to continue discovering ways to keep passion and health always high, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Here, we are always bringing tips, reflections, and inspiring stories to make each phase of life fuller and more meaningful. So, don't miss any videos. Subscribe, activate the bell, and come join us on this journey.